Hi, Coach Steve here, and we're going to go through some concepts around the 5-1 offense. We're going to cover a number of things today to try to help you learn what a 5-1 is, what a 6-2 is, and that sort of thing. And let's talk about that. They're numbers, right? So, what do they mean? Well, the first number is the number of people in the six-person rotation who actually hit the ball or will be attackers when they're in the front row. The second number is how many setters there are. So in a 5-1, there are 5 people who hit and 1 person who sets. So you'd say, well, that makes sense. That's 6 people. That adds up. In a 6-2, which we're not going to cover today, but is related to the 5-1, we have 6 players who hit and 2 setters. You go, well, wait a minute. That's 8 people. Why 6-2? Well, in a 6-2, we substitute for a position in the front row as they come to the back row with a setter. So the setter's always in a back row position, and when the setter gets to the front row position, the setter opposite them will now set from the back row. So you could have 2 setters, or in some cases we substitute maybe a taller or better hitter for the setter when they come to the front row. So that's just a little background in case you're wondering what 6-2 and 5-1 mean. So let's take a look at some things about the 5-1 and how you might play that. So the basics of rotation, base, and serve receive are some of the things we're going to cover today. So as an example, we want to let you know what rotated positions mean, and that's pretty simple. You're in order on the court, and you need to stay in order on the court at the beginning of each point. Later in our time today, we'll talk about some things you can do to stay in order but still get players in positions that you'd prefer to have them in. We'll talk about rotated and base positions. We'll go through the rotations themselves. We number the rotations, and I'm using the system that we use here in the U.S., which is a little different from other places. But we number our rotations from 1 to 6. We start with rotation 1, where the setter is in the number 1 position, in the right back position. As they go to the middle back position, that's rotation 2. As they go to the left back position, that's rotation 3. The left front is rotation 4. The middle front is rotation 5. And the right front is rotation 6 in terms of where our beginning setter position starts. So that's how we number them. There are all kinds of numbering systems, but that's fairly widely used and something you'll probably run into in most cases, and certainly in our program, that's what you'll see. So let's take a look a little bit further here. So rotated or rotational positions, what do they look like? Well, it's the order when either team serves, when you serve or when they serve. So in this case, we're going to start with rotation 1, a setter in the 1 box. Then we're going to have an outside hitter in position 2. We're going to have a middle in position 3, an opposite or a right side hitter in position 4, an outside in position 5, and a middle in position 6. And notice here that your opposite, your same counterpart in terms of the position you play. If you're an outside hitter, if you look across the court on a diagonal, you'll see another outside hitter. If you're a middle, if you look in front of you or across the court, depending on what rotation you're in, you should see another middle. And this becomes an easy way to keep you in order. Now, base positions, on the other hand, are where you go when the ball is on their side. So we have specific defensive positions that we want you in that then become offensive positions if the ball comes on our side that we want you to go to for defensive and offensive purposes, and they're not in rotation. So once the ball's put in play by either team, you can go anywhere on the court. You can't play every role. Front row players can block, which back row players can't do, and those kinds of things. But in general, you're free to move fairly freely around the court. So in this case, let's say in doing a base position here, we would like to have our opposite, who's a right side hitter, get over to the right side. And we'd like to get the outside hitter get to the left side position. And in the back row, because we like to play our middle on the left side, and we'll talk about that a little bit, and our outside hitter in the middle back, we will go ahead and have them switch as well. Now that may change. In some systems, we won't switch those two back players. We'll have an outside player playing outside or left side, and a middle player playing middle in the back row. So that'll be one decision that your coach will make. So let's talk about rotational positions. How to tell if you're in rotation. So one way to tell is to know the people, the person or the position that's behind you and in front of you in rotation. So when you get out on the court and you're in rotation, look and see who's in front of you and who's going to follow you as we rotate clockwise in each rotation. You can also look across diagonally. In this case, we would be looking at the outside hitter and you would say, oh, great, I'm opposite an outside hitter and I'm an outside hitter. So I'm probably in the right place. But as you do this a little while, you'll get comfortable with it. It just takes a little time to learn. So in this case, the middle could look and say, well, there's a setter behind me and an outside hitter in front of me, and oh, I'm across from a middle. I'm in the right place in rotation when the ball is served. So rotation, we rotate clockwise, so everybody would move in these directions as we move from one rotation to the other. When do we rotate? We rotate when we get the ball back. So, or when we, as they say, side out. So when the ball comes back to us, that means, hey, we lost the ball, the other team served. Now we have to put a new server in there, and in this case, the next server would be the outside hitter. They would rotate, and they would be the next hitter. So the idea about rotation is to rotate to get your next server in and stay in rotational order. So here again, now our outside hitter is our serving player. And we would just continue to rotate like this through the different rotations. Okay, so let me go back and do that again just to illustrate for you. This is rotation 1. And we did all this. Just want to reiterate it. And now we go to rotation 2, the outside hitter ready to hit. Rotation 3. Now notice our setter is now, they were in position 1 to start. We've done 2 rotations. Now they're in rotation 3. Now they're in rotation 4 in the front row. Now they're in the middle of the front row. Now they're in the right of the front row. And then they would wind up back at rotation 1. So again, rotated or rotational positions are the order that we need to be in when we serve or they serve. Base positions are where you go to play defense. So in the case of base positions, now let's talk about base. Now we're in the point we're playing. It's where we go once we're playing the point. So what do you need to know? You need to know your assignments. Okay, and assignments come from your coach. In our case, we'll tell you, and we'll tell you something like this. We'll tell you your front row base position. Front row, your left, middle, or right. And then we'll tell you in back row, your left, middle, and right. It won't necessarily be the same. So in our case, most often, we play with the right sides being right front and right back. They don't change. In an outside hitter who is typically sometimes called a left side hitter, the outside hitter can play, in our case, we usually play our outside hitter at left when they're in the front row and at middle when they're in the back row. And we usually play our middle player as middle in the front row and left in the back row. And so that's generally what some teams will do. Some teams will have middles in the front and back, left in the front and back, right in the front and back. That's possible as well. So you need to listen to your coach as we bring you through, and we'll make some decisions. And sometimes we'll change our minds based on the people who are playing and what they're good at or what they're maybe not quite so good at yet. So let's take an example. So in this case, we're going to have our outside hitter, and they're going to play left front and middle back like I just described. The middle will play middle front and left back. And why would we do that? Let's say our opponents typically hit cross court really well. We have this specialized player called libero, which we're not going to spend much time on right now, but they're a defensive player who can play back row, and very often they play back row for the middle hitter for a bunch of reasons. We won't cover that today. But we would do that in order to get our libero or our really good digger across the court from the the outside hitter for the other team to make sure that we've got our best player where they hit the ball the most. Another reason that we might do this is to put an outside hitter, who are generally pretty good hitters, in the middle back position so they can attack using what we call a pipe, or in our system a 50 approach to making a back row attack. That's beyond what we're going to cover today, but that's some of the reasons we might do that. So in this case, let me back this up. We're going to put a libero in for our middle back hitter, and we're going to go back to serve. So our setter's back serving. And we might move in this kind of position. So we've now, what you can see here is we're serving. So right at the serve, we're going to go right into our base positions. So we have a middle who's going to stay in the middle in the front row. We have an outside hitter who needs to get over to the left, and an opposite who needs to get over to the right. And in the back row, we have a libero who is substituting for the middle, and we said our middle will play left back base in this case. They need to switch as well, so they'll be in this position. Once the ball is put in play by the setter, they can move, and they would move like this. This would be their base. The ball would be on our opponent's side, and we would be ready to play defense. This is our position called base. Base is where you start and you look to read. You look through the net to see what the other team is doing, and you react to it. So you don't stay here. This is where you start. Then you try to guess and hopefully know from your reading experience where this ball is going to go next, and you will react accordingly. You will make mistakes, but this base position is where you start from, and then you use your skill and knowledge to try to get to the best place to defend against that particular hitter or attacker or person who's putting in a free ball. So now let's talk about serve receive and the 5-1. So we're not going to talk too much more about base right now. We're going to talk a little bit more about how to set your serve receive up with a 5-1. And we're going to make some assumptions here. One is that we want to make sure our best passers are doing serve receive at all times. And if you're not one of the best passers, get better. Keep working on it, because we work on all those things in practice so that you can get better. But we like to have our best 3 passers on our team back there. And usually the libero is one of them. And then typically our outside hitters are also good serve receivers. That's one of the skills that we want to see in an outside hitter, in addition to being able to hit well. So let's talk about this. And there are lots of other ways to do this, but I'm just going to talk through this one way. So in rotation 1, and we're receiving now. We don't want our setter, who's in position 1, we don't want them to receive the serve. So there are a couple ways we can do this. I'm going to show you one way. There are more than one, but we'll do this one. We bring our outside hitter back. Now we have 3 receivers, and we like to use 3 receivers. Your coach may use up to 5 receivers, but in our case, we like to use 3. Here you see we have 2 outside hitters and a libero, who are our receivers, hopefully our best passers. And our setter is getting out of the way, backed up, so that the outside hitter can come back. And notice we're still in rotation. No one has gone past the other person to be out of rotation. Now, in this case, we're going to do that again. Once we do that, here's another option. This is a pretty complicated option, but I'll show it to you so you can. Let's say, notice that our outside hitter, who's a good hitter in the front row, is on the right side, which is probably not the best place for them to hit. What if we wanted them to hit and we wanted to stay in rotation? What could we do? Well, let's try this. We bring our setter over and we rotate all of these folks over, and we bring our opposite all the way over. We bring our middle all the way over. Now notice that we can then bring this outside hitter all the way over here for serve receive. He's still, or she's still in rotation. In this case, we're coaching a boys team, so he's in rotation. If you notice, he's to the right of the middle in the front row. He's to the um, he's ahead of the setter, who's in back of him, so he's still in rotation. And he is in this situation. He's able to play right. His first thing is he can attack on the outside, the left side, which is where he's better. So you could do this and still have your three best passers. So even though this looks weird, it's still in rotation. So that's another option that we could do. And you have to, if everybody on the team really understood this, this would be pretty easy to do. But it takes time to learn this. So be patient and keep playing with it and learning it. So let's go back. We're now in rotation 2. Notice, how do I know we're in rotation 2? Well, the setter is in the middle back position, for one. My server was the outside hitter. We didn't show the serve. We went right to the next serve receive. So we assumed that we got the ball back. Our outside served, lost the point. Now we have to receive. So now what do we do? Well, we can move the setter up because we don't want them to receive, and we don't want typically the opposite won't be a serve receiver. And then we can simply move the libero over. The setter needs to stay to the right of the libero, but in this situation they are. We're going to move that outside hitter back, and we might adjust these other two front row hitters a little bit to let them cover balls that are short. The setter just needs to stay behind the opposite that's in front of them to stay in rotation. But this is still in rotation. Three best passers, an outside hitter who's a front row hitter who can immediately hit left side. So that's a nice way to go about serve receive in rotation 2. Let's go to rotation 3. How do we know that? Setter's now in that corner back, and you see this is a problem for many people. So how's that going to work? Well, we can do some things. Let's take a look at something we might do. Notice our libero is in the front row now. Liberos can't be in the front row. So the first thing we have to do when we get to rotation, we will have done this when we went back to serve in rotation 3, but just to show it here, you would always want your libero out and the other middle in. And most of the time when you get to serve receive after we've served, which I haven't shown here, you're going to want to have the libero and to come in for the other middle. So in this case, I've already moved our middle over into the corner. So once they come in to serve receive in this situation, we want them to, only in serve receive, not serving. In serve receive, we want them to get over to the left. I'm going to show you why. Notice that now I can bring my setter forward. They can't go past the outside hitter who's in the middle back. They can't go to the right of them, but they can come up forward. And if we go back, let me go back here. I'm going to have to do these again. Sorry about that. But notice that the setter, if he wants to stay in rotation, can't be in front of the middle and can't be to the right side of the outside hitter, but everything else is okay. So they can do this. And the outside hitter needs to be to the right of the middle hitter, and they are. And they do need to be in front of that outside hitter in the middle here. So do know that you have to pay attention that this outside hitter is in front of this outside hitter. Right here, they're pretty close. You only have to have 1 foot behind, this person only has to have one of their feet behind both of the feet of this player to be considered behind them, but you need to pay attention to that. But in this case, look, rotation 3, we have an outside hitter, and a libero, serve receiving, and we're ready to attack. Because this outside hitter, the one on the left side, is ready to left side attack. The middle in this situation, when we receive, will go into, I don't know if you can see it here, but I want them to go in here and be ready to attack. Oh, Okay, so now we're moving on to rotation 4. Rotation 4, the setter's now in the front row. And we have a couple of different ways we could serve receive. Let's talk about that. One is we could pull the opposite back and pull our outside hitter down, and that's perfect. That will work. The negative in this situation is that we have our front row hitting outside, having to hit right side. We have our middle having to hit middle, and we have nobody to hit front row left side, which is usually our strongest attacking spot. We can set the back row, so that's an option, and we can go ahead and do things like that. The setter will move over, and the middle will move over a little bit, so we can get our setter closer to the spot where they set from, and we'd receive. Now here's another option, kind of like what we did in rotation 3. We would really like this outside hitter in the front row to be able to attack immediately. So how could we do that but stay in rotation before the ball is hit? Well, we could pull the opposite back. We could pull our outside hitter all the way over here, and I'll show you how this works in a second. It's a little, the order's a little funky here. We'd move our other outside hitter to the middle. We'd move our libero over there, so now we have our people where we want to go. But the problem is this outside hitter that we brought from all the way in the front, all the way to the back, is out of rotation with the setter in the middle. Well, how can we get them into rotation? Well, we can pull the setter over here, the middle over here, and it looks a lot like rotation 3, where the outside hitter, who is the front row player, is actually this player, and he can go and attack on the left side. The middle can go into his middle position and attack middle, and the setter can set the two of them in any way available and also can play the back row. But now we have our hitters in their natural positions, which should give us a better attack. So that's rotation 4. Rotation 5 is when our setter's in the middle front, and here it's a little simpler now because all we would have to do is pull the opposite back out of the way, slide that libero over, and remember, if you're playing opposite, you have to stay in the correct order in the back row. If this opposite wanders over here to the left, past the libero, we'll be out of rotation. But right here is just fine. And now we'll just pull our outside back. Boom. Two outsides, libero, ready to go. So that works. Okay? And we might move our setter over to the setting position. Okay, rotation 6. Setters in their natural position in the front row. They're going to set there. They're going to have to block. They're going to play front row. And now we have a middle and an outside. How would we serve receive out of this? Well, one thing we'd like to do is get this outside hitter who's front row back over on this left side. Can we do that? If we move the middle over here, middles, pay attention, you're going to be over in this corner quite a lot. We can move our opposite out of the way, and we can bring our outside hitter back. Again, I'm showing here that this outside hitter is a little bit behind this player. They can't be behind this player. This middle outside, the back row outside, has to be just a little bit behind the left side outside. So my illustration here is a little bit off, but that's the general idea. And notice, I guess I noticed this when I was putting it together, I moved them back a little bit. So that's basically it. Let me come back to just talking to you a little bit. I know this is a lot, and it becomes natural after a while, but it's really good to study this. Now, some of you who like to watch video and animation, this will make a lot of sense too, and it'll be easy for you. But some of you need to be on the court to do it. Some of you may need to take and lay this out on a piece of paper or on a kitchen table with salt shakers and different things to be the different players, or just little pieces of paper that have right side and, or say, opposite and setter and middle and libero and all of that together. You may have to do that. That's just fine. Take the time to do this. It will save us a lot of work when we get back in the gym and when we're getting ready to start our season. So please take some time to learn this, and we'll also be teaching you about 6-2 as well. But you're off to a good start, and hopefully this is helpful, and we'll see you next time.